Welcome to our Wednesday interview. Today we are meeting with Andrea Meronuck. She is a licensed professional counselor, a somatic experiencing practitioner, a mindfulness self-compassion teacher, and the clinical director of Northland Family Help Center. Welcome, Andrea.
Hi, Marca, thanks.
Thanks for being here today. What I was hoping with having you today is that you could give us kind of the clinical perspective of what it's like to work with people that have experienced trauma. And you have so much training and history with working with people with trauma. So my hope today is just to kind of pick your brain a little bit on what's it like to support someone who's experienced trauma, because so many of Sage Home clients will have experienced trauma.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would love just to hear your thoughts on that.
Sure. I'll let my little dog out here. Go on. There. Part of it is patience, right? Yeah, so I think one of the most important things to consider when we're trauma survivors ourselves, or supporting friends who are trauma survivors, or working clinically with folks who are trauma survivors, is to really focus on that safety and stability, creating a sense of safety and comfort and predictability for folks, because things can have felt so overwhelming. My cat is also scratching on something as we're talking. Oh my goodness, pet time. Things have felt really overwhelming, and so if we can create a sense of regularity with folks, that can create a lot of safety. And I would say there's a phrase in counseling from Carl Rogers, who we love, and he talks about having unconditional positive regard for people. And I went to a training, I think back in September, with Dr. Joanne Cacciatore in Sedona, who teaches a compassionate bereavement care certification. And she talks about actually allowing ourselves to love people, and talks a lot about this concept that we can use called civic love. And likely there's a author who coined that term, but I'm remembering it from Joanne. So, I think that we have to be open to connecting with people. And of course, it's important to have boundaries, and we also have to let those boundaries not be walls, but appropriate meeting places with people, and that civic love can be a huge part of that. And we have to be able to empathize and have compassion and go to depths with people, versus keeping them at arm's length. And I think connecting with folks in a way that they are the actual expert on their experience. Like, I'm not the expert on someone's experience. I'm really someone who has some time and space and some training and willingness to be a co-journeyer and walk with someone and offer some things that we can experiment with together to help them potentially have some relief and gain some thriving and grow from their experience. So that's some first thoughts that I have.
Yeah, I love that. I love the idea of civic love and how it's important to connect in a space of compassion. And I'm curious about the word that you used with thriving. How does thriving get impacted when someone's experienced trauma? And is there hope that it can come back?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my sense is that, and there are a lot of thinkers and writers and clinicians who talk about that trauma is a survival situation, right? It's a survival situation where we have been under threat and hurt in some way, and things can get really narrowed. And actually, a lot of stuff happens physiologically that supports that narrowing, right? Because we have to really focus on what we need to do to make it through the situation. And sometimes if trauma is unresolved, that narrowing can remain, that hypervigilance can remain. And so, you know, to me, thriving is really coming back into our wholeness. And that means connecting to ourselves, mind, body, and spirit. And so sometimes there can be parts of our experience that we're cut off from in trauma. And it's kind of, in a way, it was a smart decision, right? It's smart to cut off from our body's experience, maybe in the moment. It's smart to dissociate so that we can actually survive that experience. But post that dissociation and that narrowing can still be there. And so gently connecting folks back to more of the breadth and depth of their experience, and really defining with folks what thriving means to them, you know, and just in terms of their own expertise on their life experience, you know, what that looks like, what that looks for them, their family, their community, their culture. Because so often too, trauma isn't an individual thing, right? It's something that happens over generations. It's something that happens in the context of, you know, the entire society, a local community. So yeah, I think thriving to me has a connection to our whole lives and connection to the community as well.
Nice. Yeah, I like that you took it from the individual and then moved it out to the system and the history. And I'm wondering, for the final question, is how can you see Sage Home as a system that supports, how can you see Sage Home supporting safety within clients that we serve?
Yeah, you know, because we talked about historical trauma, it came up sort of organically. I think that the first thing that comes to my mind is, on a long list, is having a social justice analysis and really holding people's experience and understanding that some of the ways that they've suffered, the ways that they've been traumatized have been because of oppression, and that we have to make space to broach that subject, not just in this in the way that it's about simple like counseling across difference, right? Like, you're different than me, but like, no, there's been oppression and supremacy that you've potentially been victim to, and I'm open to talking to you about that. That's a huge piece to create safety, because I think that sometimes folks have been in coercive helping situations before, and we have to own the legacy of our field in that way, and really connect with people and make partnerships around social justice. I would say another important piece to creating safety is actually those of us helpers have to work on our stuff. We have to do our own work. We have to have our own meditation practice or mindfulness, self-compassion practice. That's really important, just because, and there's really interesting research that shows that controlling for everything else, a clinician's meditation practice, like the difference between those that have a meditation practice and those that don't, the clients who see folks who have a meditation practice do better. Everything else controlled for, randomized, controlled, double blind. I would like to get the actual citation for you, and so maybe I'll be able to do that. So I think that's a huge piece too. We have to engage in, not just this thing called self-care, but actual holistic care for like self and others. I would say another huge piece for me to create safety is to not be afraid of folks' big survival energy, right? When folks are trauma survivors, or they're healing from coping and surviving by using substances, there can be a lot of big energy that can be intense for folks that are living through it, and intense for folks who are supporting folks doing that healing work. And I think if we have reverence for that big survival energy, is like, oh my God, this is how you healed, or this is how you healed in the moment, this is how you survived, this is the life force of that. Let's not be afraid of it. Let's be in awe of it. That can really flip the script in terms of just that way that people can back away from big stuff. I think it's important to shift towards celebration of the person's survival, versus, you know, them having problems or being a problem. Let's see. You know, I think another piece of creating safety is being really relationship focused, and understanding that there are attachment dynamics at play. You know, with Sage Home, there's treatment going on with adults, but there's children present, and so that's like just a beautiful unfolding of a lot of attachment healing. And for those of us who are engaged in therapeutic process with folks who are doing healing work and parenting, that relationship between us and the other person can be just a great opportunity to do some healing in that relational space. And I would also say, you know, focusing on positive things, not in a kind of cheer up buttercup sort of way, but really letting in the good and like fostering awe and joy and gratitude, and making space for processing trauma with building goodness in our lives, and helping, you know, with that defining of thriving, like we talked about. I think that's a huge piece. And I would also say that from an attachment perspective, you know, sometimes relationships with other people can be hard. And so I'm a big nature connection sort of person. I think that supporting people's access to the natural world and animals and sunsets and trees it's just a really important piece. You know, and I would say also, you know, those mind-body practices that can be really important for people, movement, music, dance, you know, creative expression. I think that's a huge part of creating safety. So yeah.
Wow, I love that. I mean, that's so well that you highlight how multifaceted it is, and how we bring all of ourselves and our systems and the culture around to support ourselves with healing, and support our clients with healing, support, you know, all that historical trauma and systemic trauma that's in play as well. So, and I also loved how you shift to all of those things that are right in them, that big energy that they needed to survive, and then the nature and the connecting to the good. I just love all of that.
Yeah.
So, Andrea, thank you so much for sharing your insight on this. You've been a part of Sage Home, at least in supporting me, for quite some time.
Yes.
And Northland Family Help Center is such an amazing organization in town. So I just really appreciate you showing up for this. So thank you.
Yeah, you're so welcome. Is it okay if I talk just a little bit about Northland?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, wonderful. So at Northland Family Help Center, we have a lot of fabulous stuff going on, just programs to support the community. So we have a free counseling program for victims of crime. Folks don't have to have any law enforcement referral to get involved. We have 2 shelters. We have a domestic violence shelter and a youth shelter. And at our domestic violence shelter, families can stay together. So we serve, any type of family constellation or makeup, folks of all genders, and so that's a resource in the community. And in both of our shelters, folks are able to access case management and access our counselors as well. We have a lay legal advocacy program to help with civil legal matters. And we have a community education program raising awareness about issues of sexual violence and healthy relationships in the community. And we also have some services for folks who've experienced trafficking, as well as the Flagstaff Initiative Against Trafficking is housed out of Northland. So trying to work in the community to intervene in trafficking. So we're doing a lot of things, and definitely so excited about Sage Home and what y'all are doing. So thank you so much, truly.
Thanks. Yeah. Northland is, when I think about how I want Sage Home to look, I just remember like how good it felt to just walk into the building of Northland and how welcoming it is. So it's definitely one of my models for kind of where we're trying to go in the sense of how we create space. So again, thank you. And I look forward to working with you more in the future.
Yes, wonderful. Thank you, Marca. Appreciate it.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.